We're going to get into the first card of the neutrals here in Ashes of Outlands, Ethereal Og Merchant. Now, this card does suck. That is true. Will it see play? I don't think so. I don't think it would ever see play. Spell damage does not seem worth it. That one spell damage does not seem worth it at all to play this card. I mean, the stats are fine, sure. You do get to deal 1 damage. It's cool. It's better Elven Archer, I guess, but I don't foresee this being used at all. It's a 1 out of 5 in my book, boys. Next card. Another Og Merchant, the Guardian Og Merchant. A 1-mana 2/1. Battlecry, deal 1 damage to a minion and give it Divine Shield. Now this one actually seems pretty interesting. So unlike the spell damage from the other card, Divine Shield actually can make a big difference. Maybe dealing 1 damage to a Frothing Berserker and giving it Divine Shield, that could potentially keep it alive and just stomp the rest of the game. It could just totally catapult it out of control. So I think there are some interesting things that you could do with this card. I'm not looking forward to playing against it, but it might just turn out to be not usable in any deck. I think overall it's actually a very good card. In Arena, it's going to be a pick for sure. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I think it's good, but I'm not sure if it's going to be used. We shall see. Next card we got here is Infectious Sporling. It's a 1-mana 1/2. Pretty interesting card. After this damages a minion, turn it into an Infectious Sporling. So, I mean, it's very good if you can rush this guy into a big minion. So the only real option that you're going to have to give this guy rush is going to be the rush lackey, and I don't think that makes this card good enough to see play. I think you would rather run other cards over it, but this is an interesting concept. I would love to see what people come up with, but yeah, you would have to have this guy stick around on the board somehow if you weren't able to give it rush, and I don't think that's possible, so I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5. Next card that we see here is Rocket Og Merchant. It's a 1-mana 2/1. Battlecry, deal 1 damage to a minion and give it rush. So along the same theme as the last few cards that we've seen. I still don't think this is good enough to run. I think the only one that's good enough to run is the Divine Shield one. I think a lot of cards are having rush already in their text. I don't know if it's worth taking that 1 damage to give it rush, or at least taking up a slot in your deck to give rush to another minion. I'm going to give this card a 1 out of 5. I think it could be strong in Arena, but that's about it. Okay, next card we got here is Soulbound Ashtongue. It's a 1-mana 1/4. And it says, whenever this minion takes damage, also deal that amount to your hero. So, I mean, a 1-mana 1/4 is very insane, but the downside of this card is quite the downside. So, the only deck that I can see this being good in is Warlock with all the new stuff that they got. That new card, that 3-mana card that whenever you take damage, whenever your hero takes damage, you gain 2 crystals. Also with the Vulture card in Warlock as well, to summon a 3-cost minion. That's the only way that I see this card being played. Besides that, I don't think it's good enough to be played, just because you could take a lot of damage on your hero. While the stats are good, you'd have to be playing, I think it's only Zulok. So for Zulok, I think this card's very strong. I would give it maybe even a 5 out of 5 for Zulok, but overall, it's not going to be played besides that one deck. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 just because it's a 1-mana 1/4. That's about it, yeah. Next, we got Bone Chewer Brawler. It's a 2-mana 2/3 with Taunt. Whenever this minion takes damage, gain +2 attack. So, I mean, this is essentially just a better Amani Berserker, it seems. It does have Taunt as well. I think this card's okay. It's above average, but I don't think it's good enough to see play. I will give this card a 3 out of 5. It's still a decent card overall. It's going to be a very good Arena card, but for Standard, I don't think it's going to make the cut. Next card we got is Imprisoned Vile Fiend. It's a 2-mana 3/5 demon with Dormant for 2 turns and has Rush. So this card does have good stats, but I think it's just a little too slow to run. We still don't exactly know how good Dormant's going to be yet in the meta, but I think you're going to have better options to run overall. This could be another Arena card. It actually seems pretty decent for Arena. Still might be a little too slow for Arena, though. I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. I don't think it's the worst card I've ever seen, but it's definitely not that great at all. Okay, so next card we got here is Moarg Artificer. Probably pronounced that wrong, but it's okay. It's a 2-mana 2/4 demon, and it says all minions take double damage from spells. So this card's pretty interesting. It's actually not as bad as it may seem. I mean, it does have very good stats, but this will allow you to do some crazy things with maybe a more spell-heavy class like Mage or Shaman. It's also quite interesting because you can get this card from Faceless Lackey as well, since it is a 2-cost minion. So that may be bad for you or it may be good for you, I'm not sure. Depends on the situation. But I think this card is actually pretty solid overall. It's going to be very limited to the decks that it can be put into, but as an overall card, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Very good stats, and the effect could honestly just turn the game around for you. Okay, next card we see here is Rust Sworn Initiate. It's a 2-mana 2/2, and it has Death Rattle. Summon a 1/1 Imp Caster with spell damage +1. So this card seems okay. Seems like more of an arena card to me. The spell damage +1 really doesn't mean too much in the standard game of Hearthstone. It's not worth playing this card and then waiting for the Death Rattles to go off. It's a little too slow. I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5. It actually is a decent arena card, but besides that, I don't foresee this seeing any play at all. Blistering Rot. It's a 3-mana 1/2, and it says at the end of your turn, summon a Rot with stats equal to this minion's. So while you can do some pretty cool stuff with this card, with maybe some of the Priest buffs or Paladin buff cards that they have, I think this card's a bit too slow to get going. I don't think this card is going to see any play at all. I think it's just a 1 out of 5, unfortunately. But maybe in Wild you could do some crazy things with it. I am not sure. But for now, it will remain a 1 out of 5 in my book. Next card we got is Frozen Shadow Weaver. It's a 3-mana 4/3, which is already pretty good. And then the battle cry is Freeze an enemy, so it can freeze their face as well. I think this card is actually pretty solid overall. Don't know if you'll have room to play this. I mean, if you don't have a great 3-drop in your deck, then I think this is a good card overall. I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's just good, not crazy, not bad at all. It's got good stats, it's got a good ability. Freeze could be very good depending on what we're really seeing in the meta. And yeah, I like it overall. And now we have the Overconfident Orc. That was my nickname in high school, actually, believe it or not. We got the 3-mana 1/6 Taunt. While at full health, this has +2 attack. Seems okay. I'm not really thrilled about it. I saw it be played in the reveal stream, and it was alright. I don't think you're gonna want to use one of your slots for this card in your deck. Maybe Taunt Warrior is the only thing that comes to mind, but even then, it's okay. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5. Not too crazy about it, but it's okay in general. Terran Gorefiend, a 3-mana 3/4. Battlecry, destroy all friendly minions. Death Rattle, resummon them with +1/+1. So you could do some pretty crazy stuff with this. Some things that come to mind are rushing this guy in with maybe a Rush Lackey, or that new 1-mana card that gives something Rush after dealing 1 damage to it. Some interesting things you could do with it. You could play Plague of Flames as a Warlock to kill this off on the first turn that you do it. I think this card has a lot of cool interactions that could go on, especially like if a lot of your minions are damaged, almost dead, or if they have Death Rattles, you could always play this, destroy them, and then they come back. You just run the risk of being silenced, of course, or sapped back to your hand, and then you lose out on a lot of value. I think overall this card's very good. It's going to see a lot of play. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Next card we got is Terror Guard Escapee. It's a 3-mana 3/7. Battlecry, summon 3/1/1 Huntresses for your opponent. And it is a demon as well. Interesting. The Huntresses are demons as well? No, they're not demons. I mean, this looks like an arena card to me. I'm going to give this card a 2 out of 5 because it is a 3-mana 3/7, so it's really not the worst thing we've seen. Of course, I don't like giving our opponent any value whatsoever, but I mean, they might not have anything to work with. I still don't foresee this being a card that's played in any deck, not in Arena, but we shall see. Next, we got Burrowing Scorpid. It's a 4-mana 5/2 beast that the battle cry is deal 2 damage. If that kills the target, gain stealth. This is a pretty interesting card. I don't think we've had a mechanic like this before. The first thing that comes to mind is maybe Rogue, new stealth Rogue, which it could be okay in. It's a little slow, and you do have to kill the target, so it does make it a little more situational. I think the card is good overall. I just don't know if it'll see play. I don't know if there's enough room for it. I think the card's pretty decent overall. If you can get the effect to go off on, per se, a Devoted Maniac on turn 4, then you set up to kill the Shield of Galakron for turn 5, then that could be a lot of value right there. But I think it's a little situational, and I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. That's what it is. Next we have Disguised Wanderer. This is a really strange card. 4 mana, 3/3 demon. Death Rattle, summon a 9/1 Inquisitor. And the Inquisitor is a demon as well. I don't foresee this card seeing any play. It's really strange. A 9/1 should not be good most of the time. I don't even think you pick this in Arena. I'm going to give this card a 1 out of 5 very easily. Let's move on to the next card. We got a 4 mana 4/4 Murloc that says Battle Cry, give your other Murlocs +1/+1. This card seems very interesting for Murloc Paladin. I actually think this is quite decent. I'm going to give this card a 3.5 to 4 out of 5. It's very good for turn 4. Murlocs don't really have a good turn 4 play, and you should be running 2 of these. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 actually. Seems very strong. Magtheridon, which is a 4 mana 12/12 demon. With Dormant, and it says Battle Cry, summon 3 1/3 enemy warders. When they die, destroy all minions and awaken. So here on the right you can see what the Hellfire warders look like. So even if you do silence the warder, as long as 3 die, then you still get the effect and he awakens and everything. So I think this card is good. But in certain cases, so I think where you get the most value out of this card is where you can destroy all 3 of those in one turn. There's some interesting things to note. If you do sap one of these Hellfire Warders or turn it into like a sheep or a frog with Hex or Polymorph, then it does disrupt this whole entire card. It becomes useless. Also, as a rogue, you are able to Shadow Step one of the Hellfire Warders and just hold on to it forever, essentially. So I think this card can get screwed over pretty easily, but if you can come up with some kind of combo, it could be okay. I think overall it's decent. I mean, a 4 mana 12/12 is insane if you get it off. It's just I don't foresee you being able to get this off until turn 5 at least, of course, and then it's still a little iffy. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to do anything crazy with it, but the potential is there, sure. Alright, now heading into one of the best cards of the expansion, Maiev Shadow Song. It's a 4 mana 4/3 Battle Cry, choose a minion, it goes dormant for 2 turns. Yeah, this card is really great. You could use it on your opponent's minion or your own minion. You're probably going to want to use it on your opponent's minion. You basically just take it out of the game for 2 turns, which is pretty unheard of in the game of Hearthstone. Yeah, this card's easy 5 out of 5. Easiest golden enchant of my life on day 1. This card's nutty. Everybody's talking about it. This is the card to make on day 1. Next card we have here is Replicatotron. It's a 4 mana 3/3 mech. At the end of your turn, transform a neighbor into a copy of this. This card really doesn't seem too great to me at all. I mean, maybe in Wild it'll be better. It should be better in Wild, where you have a lot of mechs to magnetize onto this. But for now, I think this card's going to stay as a 1 out of 5. Okay, next we have Rustsworn Cultist. It's a 4 mana 3/3 with Battle Cry, give your other minions Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 demon. So this card is kind of comparable to Soul the Murlocs, which was a 2 mana spell. did essentially the same thing, but this card can also not... One thing to note is that this card does not give the death rattle to itself, but besides that, this card does seem pretty good. If you're running a token deck, I'm assuming that you will be running this card, at least one of this card. I would give this card a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's pretty solid. Don't think it's anything crazy, but Soul the Murloc is pretty annoying. The death rattle itself is quite annoying for your opponent to deal with most of the time. Could allow you to do something with maybe Token Shaman, set up a big Bloodlust, maybe transform your minions into legendaries, those 1/1 demons. That's about all I got for it, yeah. Okay, moving on to the next card, a legendary card, Alar. It's a 5 mana 7/3 elemental that says Death Rattle. Summon a 0/3 Ashes of Alar that resurrects this minion on your next turn. So, essentially, if they don't kill the 0/3 after this dies, then it's going to come back as a 7/3, and it's just going to be a never-ending loop. So the card is very strong. It's just you have to think about, is my opponent going to be able to clear a 3 health minion most of the time? The answer is probably. But even if they do, it's still soaking up some damage, and it essentially has taunt in the first place because it's a 7/3. So I think this card is actually pretty solid. I'm going to give this card a 4 out of 5. I don't know what deck you're going to run it in yet, but it does seem just like a solid overall 5-cost minion. The next card that we're looking at is Rust Steed Raider. It's a 5 mana 1/8 Taunt Rush with Battle Cry. Gain +4 attack this turn. So this card, we saw it in the reveal stream and it was okay. It's actually pretty good. Like you do get a 5/8 with Rush for 5 mana, which is good. But then it does get downgraded to the 1 attack, so I don't think it's quite good enough to run. I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's okay. It can be good. It depends on the meta. Yeah, I just really don't like the 1 attack on the card. It doesn't seem strong enough. Okay, Waste Warden. This card is really, really interesting. I like this card a lot. One of my favorite cards in the expansion. It's a 5 mana 3/3 Battle Cry. Deal 3 damage to a minion and all other types of the same minion type. I think this card is actually going to be played in every single Highlander deck. It's a little situational of a card, but I think it's quite strong. Even if you get it off on only 1 minion, it's still decent. But I think as long as you get at least 2 minions to get this off on, it should be quite good. And I'm assuming that people are going to be playing a lot of demons or beasts or one kind of type of minions. So depending on the meta, this should be quite the card. I'm going to give this card a 5 out of 5, honestly. This is a good card. Now we got Dragon Maw Sky Stalker. It's a 6 mana 5/6 dragon. It says Death Rattle, summon a 3/4 Dragon Rider. So, I mean, this card is actually good on paper. This is going to be really good in Arena. It's probably going to be one of the best Arena cards. And it's a dragon, which is really great in Arena. But for Standard, I don't think it's going to make its way into any decks. While it is a good card, and it may be good to get off of maybe a Discover or a random dragon, I just don't think you're going to want to take up a slot in your deck for this card. I think overall it's good, but yeah, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Next card that we have is Kael'thas Sunstrider, which is a 6 mana 4/7. Every 3rd spell you cast each turn costs 0. So this card is actually already in Standard. They did release this card a few weeks early. This card's quite interesting. I think this could actually see some play. It's just you do have to make a deck revolving around it quite a bit, and thus far we haven't seen any good includes for it, or a good spot for it, but I think with the right deck building it could be usable. When you do get it off, it can do some pretty crazy things, especially if you get this off of Power Creation as a mage. It can allow you to maybe play a Pocket Galaxy on that same turn as well. I think this card's good overall. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. While it's good, I just don't see where it'll be played, but I think people might prove me wrong. So we're getting into another card that's good, but probably not good enough to run. Scavenging Shavara. It's a 6 mana 6/3 demon. and its battle cry is deal 6 damage randomly split among all other minions. The fact that it does it to all other minions is not that great because it can hit your friendly minions, of course. But if you play this when only your opponent has other minions, then this can be very good. Is it still good enough to run? I don't think so. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5. It could be pretty nice in Arena. We're going into the same boat again with Bone Chewer Vanguard, where it's a decent card, but it's not quite good enough. It's a 7 mana 4/10 taunt. Whenever this minion takes damage, gain +2 attack. So it is quite the investment, but 10 health is a lot of health. So I think it is a nice wall, but you'll probably have other things to run. Looks like an Arena card to me. 1 out of 5 for standard, 3 out of 5 in general. I think it's a decent card. Next card. Supreme Abyssal. This card is quite interesting. It's an 8 mana 12/12 demon that cannot attack heroes. But if you do silence it, it can attack heroes. So that is something to keep in mind. I think this card is pretty good. It's another Arena card. I don't know if it's worth playing in your deck, but overall it's a 3 out of 5. It's 8 mana 12/12. It's good. If you get it eaten by Sack Pact, it's actually awful. Yeah, I think it's okay. No, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 actually. And rounding it off with the last card of the expansion, Scrapyard Colossus. We did see this card be played in the reveal stream just a little while ago. It's a 10 mana 7/7 elemental with taunt that has a death rattle to summon a 7/7 Fellcracked Colossus with taunt. So the Fellcracked Colossus is essentially the same thing, just no death rattle again. It's another elemental. We did see this be played in the reveal stream, and it was actually decent. You are investing a lot of mana into it though, and if it does get silenced or sapped back to your hand, you really hate to see it. So I don't think this card will get played. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 because it is just decent, but yeah, the downside is just too big of a downside of getting this silenced or sapped. I can see it being really nice in Arena, but besides that, I think that's all. I think that's all the places that you'll see this card. And that is all for the neutral cards. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for watching. Very excited about the new Ashes of Outlands cards to come. We'll see if my predictions are correct. I don't know. I could be totally off on a lot of these cards. I mean, I think I have a good understanding of what the game's going to be like, but you never know. People could come up with some crazy combinations of cards. But who's to say that anybody could really determine the strength of these cards without actually trying them out? I'm very excited to see what happens. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. It's your boy.